welcome everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful week. So, I'm playing the Unicorns. We've been mostly covering how, as a tech entrepreneur, everything you needed to know as a tech entrepreneur to go and build your company, come up with the ideas, etc., and then bring interesting people that are trying to change the world. And here at FJ Labs, as VCs, we're really trying to invest in the companies that build the world as we want it to exist and as we want it to happen. And we've seen tremendous progress over the last 2,500 years. But if you think of education, it's one of the few areas where nothing has really changed. If I took Plato from 2,500 years ago to today, most of the things in the world he would not recognize. We have these crazy devices that allow us to have like global instantaneous communications through video and wirelessly. We can fly to the other side of the world. And yet, the way we educate our kids has profoundly not changed. We have a teacher of varying quality teaching a class of students of varying quality and spewing facts. And that's definitely not the way I think we in the 21st century envision the future of education. So today I've actually the great pleasure of having here Chrisman, who's the founder of Synthesis. And Synthesis is basically taking the best elements of what Elon did at his school at Astra and trying to bring it to the world in a scalable way and basically try to build the education of tomorrow. So without any further ado, let's get started. So welcome to episode 23, Synthesis, the startup scaling up the most innovative ideas from Elon Musk's school. So, Chrisman, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I mean, maybe I want to start with like just a little bit of your background and then lead into, what Synthesis is, how you came up with the idea, what do you think the future of education holds?
Yeah. So my background is, I've been interested in education, basically my whole life. Like I didn't really pay any attention in school at all, but I read a lot of books. And so I kind of, through reading the books, I actually read a book by Tony Robbins when I was like 17. And that's the one that changed my life because I got the idea that you could acquire ideas by reading books and they'd make your life better. And I just didn't know that before, as crazy as that is. Like the books you read in school or like, they're trying to get you to read some old literature or something, which I wasn't interested in. But he was writing about like, how could you make more money and have like a better relationship and run your life with more pleasure and less pain, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I realized I thought that was kind of the biggest lever to change the world, was spreading ideas. So I started companies as soon as I got out of college. Ended up starting an online tutoring company, which got kind of like acqui-hired by a company called Class Dojo, where I spent the last 8 years. Class Dojo is like a messaging app for K through 5 teachers and families. It's grown to like 51 million users worldwide now. And through that, I got a chance to visit a ton of schools, just everything that was happening that was innovative in the education space. And I eventually became very disillusioned because there was nothing terribly innovative going on. And I ultimately, got a chance to go to the school that Elon Musk had started.
And by the way, why do you think that is? Make it a little more conversational. Why do you think nothing that innovative was going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's definitely. I think there are very few people who will really think things through from first principles. There's a lot of what goes on that's innovative tends to be kind of derivative, and you start with this model of like, well, you're going to have kids like in school, and there's going to be a teacher who's going to be teaching them, and there's not that much that's really you just think through what do kids need to learn, what is their work going to look like, what skills do they need from like a first principles approach. Okay. I think that's like a really big part of it.
Yeah,
it's one of
the
things that's really frustrating.
So you went to Astra, and they were doing things differently.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting much, but I went down to visit at Astra, and I did the little tour. It was like right before lunch, and had like lunch and recess. Like I was hanging out with the teacher. Some of the kids were playing dodgeball, and then there was this other group of kids that was inside, and they're gathered around a table, and they're sort of shouting these really complex sounding arguments at each other. And I was turning to the teacher next to me. I was like, "What's going on?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's synthesis. The kids get kind of obsessed with it." And I was like, "This is a school thing? Like this, one, this looks like they're having a lot of fun, and two, the complexity of the arguments that they're making and their communication skills. Like I was working at Dojo, which is this like really high growth tech company, like a place where a lot of people would want to work, and these kids sounded like our top people at that company, and the oldest of the kids was like 13, and so I was like, this is the future of education. Like, how do I get my kids in this? And pretty much started badgering Josh for how to make that happen. Like,
we probably should, just for not everyone is necessarily aware of what Ad Astra is and who Josh are, so perhaps we should talk about that for a few seconds, and then we can double click. Right?
Yeah. So my co-founder in Synthesis is Josh Don. He was a teacher at in this program called Teach for America, where they send really great teachers into low income districts to most like get a feel for what that's like and try to make a difference for usually just like a couple years. I think Josh did that for like 7 years, which is unusual. And then he was recruited by a gifted school in Los Angeles where Elon Musk kids went. And Elon just walked into his classroom one day and was like, I want to start a school. I want to start from scratch, from first principles. Can you help me do that at SpaceX? And so they created this tiny little school, which was, just for like some of the Elon's kids and like the other rocket engineers at SpaceX. And Elon was basically like, let's approach this from first principles and build what we want. And so the principles were stop doing the grade segregating kids by age and having everybody learn the same thing at the same time. And the other one was to make the school problem focused instead of tool focused. So most schools they'll teach you, a course on wrenches, a course on screwdrivers. And Elon wanted to say, here's an engine, let's take it apart. Now you have to learn how to use a wrench or a screwdriver. And so they built that school together. And that's where Synthesis came from. That Elon's first principles approach. Co-founder Josh, he sort of created these simulations, games and simulations to be the problems for the kids to solve. And then he added this team sports element to it to make it a little bit collaborative, a little bit competitive. And so that's what I witnessed there at the school. I was seeing the kids after 2 to 3 years of doing that kind of training, and they're just completely like blew my mind with how sophisticated they gotten in that time.
And a few questions. So I realized that in Synthesis, the kids are varying ages, but in the school, if I recall correctly, they were ranked again by ability. It depended on your ability, not your age, and so you could have a 6-year-old and a 13-year-old in the same class. But was there a selection on ability or not at all? It was like everyone's in the same class and like sink or swim, or like how do you deal with it? Because I can imagine some 6-year-olds are like super advanced geniuses in math and some not so much, and they don't all belong in the same class.
Well, yeah, for their math, they were in the school. It was individual, so there were no like math classes. For Synthesis, they were divided up into the uppers and lowers. So it was like 7 through 10 would be in one group, and 11 through 13 or 14 would be in another group. But then within that, no other group. But
there's no selection on ability or anything. It's just okay. You're all in the upper or lower, and then you're thrown in there. And I guess the idea is that you level up. If you create high expectations, people become better.
Yeah. I mean, so the school is small, right? There's only like 30 kids at the peak of the school. So there wasn't even within that school, you didn't even have the ability to track the kids. Like if you really wanted to. And yet, it's an important concept to mix the ability and age levels. I mean, for one, like the Synthesis games and simulations vary quite a bit. So it's not always like the smartest kids are the best at all of them. So that's important. And then the other side is like the dividing the kids up by age is one of the worst things we do in our education system. That is historically anomalous. We've never really done that in human history until the industrial era, when we started to try and treat the schools like a factory system. kids benefit a lot from being around kids who are a little bit more advanced than them and a little bit not quite as advanced, right? So you get to I have a friend who teaches jiu-jitsu, and he says, like, sometimes you need to be the hammer and sometimes you're the nail, and you really need both of those to improve. And so that's the way it is in synthesis, where if you take like a kid in like the public schools who's like gifted, they're always, they're in the same age, they're only with kids their own age, they're always going to be the hammer. That's bad, right? Because you never get used to being on the other end of things, and that's not good for your development. And so that's one of the concepts, like mix them up with age. That way everybody wins some, they lose some, and the simulations kind of bring this out where you need a team to do it well. So even if it's not like a normal group project where you can just let the smartest kid do all the work. Like, you need the other players on your team, even if they're not quite as advanced. You have to figure out like where everybody fits in.
Can you give an example of what a simulation, or what an example of the problem would be, and why you need a team, and why it's not just the smartest because you're right, in group projects at school, the advanced kid might just do the entire project for everyone else, and everyone else is doing nothing, and so they're the hammer. They're never challenged beyond their level, and everyone else is like either too challenged or not doing anything particularly interesting. So
yeah, that's so. I'll give you an example of a simulation, just to make this a little more concrete, and then I can explain like why you need to divide up the roles. So one of the games is called Art for All. In that one, you are running art auctions at various cities around the globe. So you're doing like a tour of these. Actually, you're doing like art shows. So you're doing a museum show, and you're going to charge for tickets. And there's an auction where you're competing with the other teams to win the right works of art. So you have to kind of budget. Every work of art has has some price that it's worth based on the market for that city. So you have to balance like all the all this kind of like financial data. You have to not overspend. When the kids come in, the first thing they do is they all want to bid like $150 million for Starry Night, right? Because they all like the look of that one, and then they realize like, okay, we got this beautiful work of art, but we can't charge that much for it, so we're going to lose money. So that's one of the examples of the simulations. That's really fun.
If I recall correctly, so you build a simulation but you don't tell them the rules of it. You don't actually tell them the rules of the simulation. They need to figure out what the simulation is.
In that one, I think we tell them. Yeah, what do we tell them that there's the goal is to make money.
Okay.
So there's part of it is the goal. Josh always designs these things with multiple conflicting goals.
Okay.
So one of your goals is to make money. The other one is to please the critics, because that's going to help you make more money the following year. So you need to have some kind of cohesion to your collection. It's never as straightforward as just like maximize your profit, because that's the way life is,
sure.
Right? If you live your life trying to maximize the amount of money you make at the exclusion of everything else, like that's not great. So you have to make these difficult trade-offs in the games.
Okay. But usually they don't know really the rules of the game. So often it's like figuring it out.
And they don't know. No, we in that one I think we just tell them like, you have these two metrics where you're going to be scored on, and then we don't tell them anything else about how it works. You're just you're thrown into it, and you have to figure it out.
So how many kids would you have playing this?
Typically we have cohorts now. So if kids join, they're in a cohort, and there's between 16 and 24, okay. And so they're usually on teams of 3 or 4. So you've got to work with within your team, and then
your team is 3 or 4.
With like 5 or 6 others.
So why do you need 3 or 4? Like, how do you make sure that one person is not doing all the work?
Yeah, so similar to, if your audience is interested in startups, like it's the same reason that you can't do that in startups. There's too much coming at you. It's too complex. There's sort of like limitless places to spend your energy, and it's competitive, right? If you're doing a startup, you have to break through. You have to get people's attention somehow. You have to be able to recruit people to join you, and so it's competitive. So if you're trying to do everything yourself, you're going to be too slow. Like, you're just not going to be able to move fast enough to keep up with the other teams.
Okay, so basically you do end up needing the CMO and the CFO and the COO versus the CEO or whatever, like different roles, divide and conquer to make sure you succeed. And so basically you're teaching problem solving. Yep.
Yes, I would say you're teaching like collaborative
problem solving, right? Like, which actually is really a good metaphor for life, and definitely for startups for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's when I first saw it. I was like, the thing that popped in my head is like Ender's Game for innovators. People have read Ender's Game. There's about a futuristic society that they have this problem. They have an alien invasion that's on the way, and they don't have the skills to deal with it. And so they create an academy. Like, let's make the kids able to deal with this by the time the aliens get here. And so the book explores like, how would you do that? And the answer is, you do it through team games, right? Yeah. You need to learn to work together, but you use the competition element to drive your progress higher and higher, right? Because there's no like getting an A, right? Like there's no we've done enough work to get an A or get a B. No, if another team does more than you, then you will lose. And so that drives the kids to these like kind of crazy heights that are kind of like hard to imagine. When you start thinking about your average 10-year-old.
So I take it the beauty of Synthesis, the startup, versus Synthesis at Ad Astra is like many more kids can take advantage of it because the same simulation can be run many more times. So it's a lot more scalable because it's done online.
It's a lot more scalable, and the competition is more endless, right? And like we realized that pretty much right away. Like when we started opening it up more, initially the Ad Astra kids, they're in there too, and they're the best. Mm-hmm. And then that changed like very quickly, right? Which is crazy because Ad Astra is like the most selective school in the world. Like to even apply, you had to be like an engineer at SpaceX. Which
you had to be a rocket scientist to apply.
And
not everyone got
it. It's like a 1 in 25 chance of getting in, right? Everybody wants to send their kids to school with Elon's kids, so it's an incredibly selective group. And what we found is like when you open it up to the whole world, like surprise, there's a lot of really talented,
and so all the cohorts are competing against each other.
The cohort. So right now, and we're very early with this, right? Like we just launched 6 months ago. Right now, you're competing with the other kids who are in your cohort. But as we go, there's that element of like cohorts competing against each other, right? So right now the kids are kind of siloed; they're in their cohort. Yeah. Eventually, it's going to be more like a network where you'll join a team and you'll be competing with like all the other teams across this network.
And so Synthesis today is what's the business model, or what does it entail exactly in terms of like what do the kids do, how much does it cost, how does it work?
Yeah. So it's a subscription. We call it like an enrichment program now. It's $180 a month. The kids will meet once a week for an hour. It's kind of like the minimum. And then there's like a Discord server that they can join where with Discord's like a chat app for kids if people aren't aware of that. Or I mean it's for everybody, but every kid is on it.
My audience, it's startup people, probably your gamers and no Discord, etc.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of like parents like aren't aware of it. When we're like, hey, does your kid want to join our Discord server? They're like, what's that? But the kids all know about it. So yeah, there's Discord server where we're firing up like kind of like challenges and where we you can play like other games as well and other like kind of classes and things like that.
And in Synthesis at Ad Astra, it was only 1 hour a week as well, because that doesn't seem like very much. I mean, I realize kids are super busy, so perhaps it's only the only time that is affordable, but.
Yeah, well, right now, the strategy is kind of to start off like sort of high touch and like a, higher price. So there's a facilitator, in every classroom. There's like kind of a teacher who's like, and the teacher is there, by the way, because there's sort of, have this like model of like fast and slow. So, you initially are opening up to the simulations. There's a little bit of information there. There's time to digest. There's time to like make a plan. Then you're like in the game and it's just total chaos. And then after that, you come back for some like reflection where we're like coaching you on how to improve your thinking and your analysis in general, and also how to improve your collaborative abilities.
And at Ad Astra, was also only 1 hour a week, or was it different there?
It depends. They would do it sort of like in seasons there, so they wouldn't do it at all some weeks, and then sometimes it would be sort of all-encompassing, like what I saw. The kids were obsessed with it, and they were planning all the time. And we'll get there. We just we have limited. We need to sort of make the games like so it will increase.
But right now,
as we build
just
up,
to be so like each simulation is about a month, so it's 4 1 hour meetings. That costs $180 a month, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's right.
And after a month you'll go and do another simulation. Will you stay with the same group of people for the next simulation, or you change the groups, or how does that work?
Yeah, for now you're with the same group. So that's your group for your 1 hour class, and on the Discord you can connect with like whoever.
Sure.
Eventually, it's going to be more free flowing.
Sure, of course.
But we're still figuring that out. We're just getting.
And the
started.
1 hour class is 16 to 24 people, or does it subdivide in subgroups?
It's 16 to 24, but then you're always on like different teams within that
the 16 to
cohort.
24. Okay, understood. Okay,
Yep,
and there's
yep,
one
yep.
person from synthesis, like kind of moderating and helping and facilitating.
Yeah, exactly. And as the initial issue was like we started this off like quite small, quite slow, like very, very selective. As you get to like a critical mass of students, then it starts to the scheduling starts to work out a little better, and you can be a little bit more free flowing with that. But yeah, that's why we started.
But now you're at
that way.
thousands of students, if I'm not mistaken. Or
yeah, about 1,500 now. Yeah, since the funding.
So
announcement.
you've been doing this for 6 months. Any early learnings, lessons, or anything really unexpected that came out of this, or?
Yeah, I mean the kids they're just smarter than you could imagine, and so it's really the difficulty is just coming up with things that are complex enough to challenge them, because one of the things Josh and I connected on was that I was asking about the first simulation I saw, and I was like, this just seems like really complex. Are these just it's because you have rocket scientist kids, And he was like, no, I mean, kids crave complexity. So what happens if you give them that complexity? We're used to dumbing things down for kids. When you give them complexity, then they master it, and then they're like, okay, what's next? Like, I want more. And so we both knew that, but I think like if your kids are in this version, like Synthesis, the company, it's actually better than what they were doing at Ad Astra, because it's much faster, because it's software, and so it evolves even faster, and the kids they master it like at a rate which is.
So the problems you're doing today are like harder for if you're 6 months in the problems you were doing at the beginning.
It's much harder, much faster paced. Like it's the next evolution of what they're doing at Elon.
It's
School.
interesting because there are elements of gaming in here, but it's actually gaming towards problem solving, towards like practical world applications, especially if you have entrepreneurial aspirations. So it's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can think of it like one way to conceive of it is sort of like team chess, right? Like, so chess is a game that you play, with your mind. You don't need a lot of fancy graphics to play chess, and it's sort of just like, adds a teamwork element to it. And there's also there's knowledge like that you gain from playing the games. If you play Art for All, you have to learn about auctions, and you have to learn about profit and loss and like those kind of things. But yeah, it's fascinating that kids will connect with it when. You might think that because it's not very graphics heavy that, it's not going to hold their attention. But we found the opposite. Like these kids, like they feel like their brain, becoming sharper when they're playing like a complex game like this, and they really have to think. They can feel that, and they gravitate toward it. That was another.
Do you have a selection process? Like, do all kids get in, or you make them take a number of tests, or like what are the requirements, and what's like the acceptance rate, if you want?
Yeah, we don't share the acceptance rate. It's but yeah, we have a selection process. There's an application that you have to go through. It's basically just it's a complex question, complex in the sense that like there's no right answer to it. So we give you some data. You have to sort of figure out what your answer is. The question that we've gone with so far is like who would you pick to lead a Mars mission? And we tell you about a couple people, and then you make your choice, and then you justify it in like a video or like an audio clip, and then we kind of choose the kids we think are number one, like most likely to succeed in the program, but number two, like a lot of kids you can tell like it's like their parents made them do it and they're not interested in it, and so we're looking for the kids who want to do this, not something like their parents have decided they should be in the thing that came out of Elon School. So yeah, those are kind of the criteria.
And do you think in at some point there's going to be like it's going to be more than like 1 hour a week? It'll be more like. Do you think can you envision a future where this could be the full K through 12 replacement program? I mean, not the immediate future, obviously. Our
focus, our mission is to accelerate human progress through education. And so progress in our view comes from advancements in science and technology. So, if you want your kids to do arts or like learn other languages or something, like we're just never going to do it. We're never going to be about helping kids explore their hobbies unless they're related to, sort of like science, engineering, complex problem solving. That happens to be what I care about, and my kids are interested in that sort of thing. So we will expand it. We have we have a program now that's already expanded to like 2 hours a week, and the goal is to get up to something like about 2 hours a day. I think is like maybe the limit. But yeah, we'll expand. There's no way it's going to be limited to like an hour a week. I think at least up to 2 hours a day is sort of like the proximate goal, and it's just a matter of scaling up the team, scaling up the simulations, making more complex ones, and learning as we go.
Do you sell to the parents, or you sell to the kids, or you sell to both? Like who? How does this initiate? Like, you convince the kids, and then the kids convince their parents, or the parents are like, "Oh, this looks like something my kids should be doing, and let's go and sign them up."
It goes both ways. I think it's better when you sell to the kids, right? Because if your kid is like, "I want to do this thing where I'm going to be learning," and it's like pretty hardcore, it's very difficult. Most parents are going to say yes to that, and then we need to explain to the parents, because a lot of parents are they're old fashioned. We're products of the school system the way it was, right? And it's very difficult to look at that system, and if you went through it and you're like, well, this is garbage, this is a major bottleneck on humanity, as I believe, it's hard to say that, because you're actually saying like, I am less than I could have been, if that system.
I totally agree. I mean, look, I was not challenged, even though I skipped some grades and was always number one in school, et cetera. Like, I was doing so much more outside of class than within class, right? I was like building computers, running a bulletin board service, selling computer parts, and everything could have been at a much higher level and much more advanced. Maybe not of the same kids, but it would have been so much more interesting and challenging. How do you address, though, a lot of parents have this anti-gaming mentality, and in a way, simulation is kind of a game. How do you address the concern, oh, they're just playing another video game, even though it's not a graphic and intense one, and it is collaborative? But like a lot of the modern games, think of Roblox, it is social and collaborative in its own right.
Yep. Yeah, I think the difference is, like you can play a Call of Duty, that's collaborative, but like or some of the early kids describe this to us, like they're, because I asked them this, I'm like, would you rather do this or play Call of Duty? Rather do synthesis or Call of? And I expect the answer, it was like our first month, I was like, it's going to be Call of Duty, like no questions, right? And they're like, well, actually synthesis. And I was like, you're lying, like, explain. And they're like, you can just feel like you're getting better at like the game, but you're not like you're using your brain when you do synthesis, is how they put it, right? And I can see this with my kids. They play Mario Kart, like that's, I'm not against video games at all, but like that's not sharpening you. It's not like teaching you how to think, how to make decisions under uncertainty, how to like, really make a complex plan with people, in a difficult, complex and like changing environment. But to answer your question directly, like we don't really explain to parents. Like we show them, people will get their kids in, and we'll show them videos of the sessions, and then they either get it or they don't. And some people they don't, right? Like people who are really deep like education backgrounds, they see what goes on in synthesis, and they're like, wow, this is the future. Like that's what I saw. I'm building this for my kids. So like, our customers are just people who they see what we're doing, and they just get it. And if you're asking like, how are you grading this? Like, is this going to help them get into college? It's just not right for you.
Are you telling them where they rank relative to the other teams, though? So it is in a way graded, though, because it is competitive. So by definition, there must be a metric or a measure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
it's per game, and you get. I think there is, of course, some cognitive ability, right? Some genetic cognitive ability, but I believe the work you put into it and the drive is more important. So yeah, we have the scoreboards, and kids will kids just like to move up,
Yeah.
right? It's not like if you're in your class, your fourth grade class, and it's the same, 25 kids, year after year, and you're if you're at the top, you tend to just stay at the top.
Absolutely.
But this is different. You can move up, right? Like it's not graded on a curve or anything like that. You can move up in the world, and I think kids love that. That's why they engage with games, and that's why they engage with synthesis.
Since you've launched this, have you heard of other innovative educational concepts, or have people said, "Oh, this is amazing, I'll go and apply something similar in another context"? Or are you seeing more? I mean, because in COVID, something happened for the first time, which is all of a sudden education, which was offline and sclerotic, everyone had to move online. There's been a lot of changes. There's been a step change in penetration for online education, with people realizing how much they can learn on. Not just the Coursera's of the world, the Khan Academies, but YouTube videos, etc. So I wonder if you're seeing for the first time the beginning of the online education revolution beyond what synthesis is doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I hope. There's some cool things like OutSchool. My kids have used that to take some classes. You can take classes online. I hope to see a lot more. I hope somebody builds builds something where you can just learn from watching YouTube videos. I think that's, to me, that's to acquire. I think synthesis is doing something that's unique. It's giving you a practice environment to kind of practice your skills, and that's that's what we want to focus on. But I also want my kids to learn physics, and I think YouTube is sort of the way they're probably going to do that. And I think there's interesting things to be built on top of video and those sort of things. But
my observation is the Khan Academies, the Coursera's, the YouTubes are available. You can learn anything. If there's something I don't know, I go and look it up and learn it. But what I'm noticing is there's a real segregation of the people who have the curiosity, drive, and interest in doing that, and those who don't. Because in a way, even now, if you're a poor Indian, someone in the suburbs, you have a smartphone, you have access to all this information, but there's going to be a fundamental drive between one kid who's going to be I want to learn everything and change the world, and most others are not going to do that. And I don't know how we change that. How do we make it more common that everyone, because the information is there, the tools are there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think some people are certainly just driven by curiosity. I don't even know if that's ideal. I know I was always driven to learn to sort of improve my position in the world, right? I've learned accounting to do the business, but not because I'm curious exactly. It's just that's kind of a thing that you have to do to succeed.
Need and necessity and curiosity could both be drivers, but leading to different areas of interest and analysis, I guess.
I think so. Have you also noticed how, if you look at the top athletes, there's often all these stories about how they work the hardest. It's legendary how hard Michael Jordan worked, or Kobe. Well, why is that, right? I think it's because they can see that they can be the top. They can be the number one. They have the skills that they can see, if I work hard at this, I can move up in the world. And I think that maybe the same thing may apply to education. If you think that you can learn and improve your position in the world, and I think the sooner that you can improve your position in the world by learning, the better. The more near term the goal is.
And by the way, it's so much easier in that world than in sports, right? How many people I was having a conversation with professional tennis players a few days ago, and only the top 70 are profitable. 70 out of 7 billion, it's nothing. Whereas how many people in business make money? Billions. It's the standards are much lower. It's a lot easier,
right? Yeah, that's right. I mean, that goes back to our mission: accelerate human progress through education. Right? Is one of our big principles we want to teach the kids is that these are not zero-sum games. The world can be infinitely cool. It can be infinitely amazing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not a zero-sum game in the way sports are. I mean, it's a zero-sum game within synthesis, but whether you're winning or losing, if everybody's level is rising in an absolute sense, all of us can succeed. Everybody can be wealthy, right? Because we all create wealth for each other.
Look, I totally agree. The world is infinitely wealthier today than it was a couple hundred years ago because of technology. And it is not a zero-sum game where, my gain is your loss and vice versa. We could just grow the pie. Everyone could be better off. And frankly, today, everyone is better off, even though we still obviously have a lot of issues we can address. And we're going to address with technology.
Yeah, we have a ways to go, but we're at the very beginning of this sort of this moving to a positive sum world. The more our work becomes the work of our minds and the work of our creativity, the more amazing place the world becomes. The more problems we solve, the better things get.
Have you read the book on infinite games? Of creating things that have infinite potential versus defined games where these are more zero sum because there's an amount that you can split between each other. And the more we think of growth mindsets of building the world of tomorrow, the more we're gonna get away from these zero sum thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I have read James Carse. That's a great book. I've been rereading Beginning of Infinity, which is incredible. It's kind of this similar idea, but from a physics perspective. And the title, it's in the title, that there's no limit to human knowledge. Anything is possible if it isn't prohibited by the laws of physics. And that's been a big inspiration for us in starting the company. We want to raise a generation of kids who are incredibly bright or incredibly driven to adopt that mindset. And hopefully fewer of them will go to work on Wall Street, and more of them will invent cool things that make all of our lives better.
Have you actually read David Foster Wallace's book on infinity? I think you. I don't remember if it was on zero or infinity, but I've been meaning to actually.
I do. I have it. I went on a David Foster Wallace kick one time, and I remember I tried to read it on vacation. I was it's what wasn't sticking with me at the time. Have you read it?
I've read almost all of his other works, and I just read it's a collection of his last interviews. And I re-listened to his commencement speech, and I was moved. And I remembered he wrote a book on the topic, and he talks in some of the interviews about it. I was like, oh, maybe I should check it out. It'd be interesting to see what mindset he brought to infinity, and whether it's related to the one we have.
Now I'm gonna read it.
Or we can read the synopsis or listen to the Blinkist.
He's a good one. I enjoy. He wrote a book. He wrote a 50-page essay about his going on a cruise ship, which is not something I would ever read about, but I read it and it was delightful.
Or the tennis ones, they're pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So you just announced the fundraising round. I don't know if you want to share, or if I don't know what I don't even know what's public or what's not public.
It's on Twitter. It's been a good a fun week. We were cash flow positive pretty much since the beginning. Josh and I funded the company ourselves. We just weren't sure if this was synthesis had been limited to rocket engineers' kids, and we just had no idea. We were happy. I just wanted to make it for my kids. I was happy if it was a small business, wasn't about the money. And once we kind of got rolling with it, we were like, okay, I think this is something that it would appear a lot of kids could benefit from. So we raised a small round in January, which is a seed round, which was just to get some influencers on the cap table. So people who could help us spread the word and be helpful. Not traditional VCs who kind of have to be just driven by maximizing the profits. We wanted to make sure we could always choose the student's long-term best interest, and then that worked out incredibly well. So we did the Series A, which got a lot of great folks involved with, and just trying to build the network around the company and help us grow, help us tell the story. It's been a lot of fun. It's been
in hindsight, I realized I probably should have started by disclosing I am an investor in the company. So disclosure, I'm an investor. So what's next? What are you doing with this investment money, and where are we going?
With the money, again, we're in a crazy position that I never would have expected or planned on finding ourselves in, which is that we're cash flow positive and growing 40% per month. So really, probably the money, we probably just can't honestly spend it fast enough. But we're going to be hiring, a lot of really talented people. I think that's sort of the main thing, right? we've got the cash, we have some narrative penetration, right? Like people are starting to pick up that this is out there, and we need really, really talented people to build it out. And
look, when you hit product market fit and it pulls you, it's like you're on a rocket ship and you're being pulled. But it's amazing because you've hit product market fit. Everyone else is like dying to begging customers to use the products, and when people are just coming in their own and you just can't grow high or fast enough to deal with the growth, that's a fantastic feeling. Even though obviously you're putting Band-Aids and duct tape everywhere to make sure the wheels don't fall off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're not sleeping. It's just like back to back kind of crises all day, every day. But it's also really fun, right? It's odd, but you hear guys who Jocko Willink is someone I'm like a big admirer of, and he talked about leading men in war in Iraq, which is horrible. And he says it's horrible, and he also said it was like he knew his life would never be that good again.
Yeah.
Right. And then, that's the way we feel. This is it's crazy. It's like you have
a sense of purpose, a sense of mission, and a brotherhood with the people around you, where you're mission driven, and there is nothing I think that makes humans feel more alive than that having a purpose and a family to fulfill that purpose with.
Absolutely. So it's the best position to be in, and it's chaotic, but it's a great time.
Anything we didn't cover that we should cover, or that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
I wanted to say the product market fit thing. The other interesting thing that's sort of new maybe is I think we have a sort of like a narrative market fit, which is interesting, right? It's like people, they hear about synthesis, then they're interested. It's like there's all this energy in the world. I always use the analogy with Bitcoin. There's all this energy in the world around changing up the financial system somehow, and Bitcoin is like this Schelling point that attracts and channels all that energy. And it feels to me in some ways like synthesis is in a similar position, not at the scale of Bitcoin, but where there is this energy around, let's do something different in education, right? Like it's time to change this. There's enough people who are aware that something needs to change, and we've become luckily enough like sort of like a focal point for talent, for energy. Like people want to help, right? People who are reading about us on Twitter want to help. Really accomplished and incredibly influential and helpful investors want to help us. And so that's like, I'm not sure how true that was 10, 20 years ago, but now when the world's moved from like a corporate media environment to more networked, it's an important thing to think about when you're starting a company. And not everybody is going to be able to have that. Not every company is like that, but it's something that we have thought about, and it's been it seems like an interesting new development.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, it's also an interesting notion beyond product market fit. It's like narrative fit, product fit, or market fit, where all of a sudden everyone agrees there's a there, and like the world needs to change, and we need to change the way we educate our children. And I agree. Like it's one of the few categories which, as I said in my introduction, hadn't changed in 2,500 years. So it's a bad time. So all audience members, if you have kids age 8 through 13 and perhaps soon 6 through 13, send them to Synthesis. I definitely will be sending my future kids there. And, well, thank you, Chrisman, for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.